afternoon. Again, my name is Bill Ellison, and today we are here to talk about raising money, how you do it, and what instruments you use to do it. And with a particular focus on early stage companies, which covers most of you guys in this crowd. Okay, it works now. So I'm talking about 5 different ways to raise capital, and here they are. I'm going to go through each one of these briefly, and after each one, if there are any questions, jump in, okay? So let's start with common stock, equity. So real quickly, equity is simply ownership in a company, and so from a terminology perspective, if you are a C corporation, your owners are shareholders, and they own stock. If you're a limited liability company, your owners are called members, and they own units. Throughout this, I probably would just be using the term shareholder and stock, so keep that in mind. Typically, when you start a company, whether C corporation or LLC, you issue equity. You know, we have 2 founders. I'm going to get 60%. You're going to get 40%. The next people who typically get it are the friends and family. Okay, I've maxed out my credit cards. I've put in all my money. I'm now going to my dad and my mom and all their friends. And quite often, young entrepreneurs sell common stock to their friends and family. That's fine, but there's a kind of a problem that typically happens. They don't care about what your valuation is. They just know you and they like you and they want to support you. So quite often, they'll sell common equity at a really high valuation. And then what happens is when you go to raise money from people who kind of do this for a living, angels, venture capitalists, they go, whoa, 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 that $5 million valuation that you sold to your brother-in-law, that's ridiculous. You know, we're going to invest at a $2 million valuation. So quite often your friends and relatives get crammed down and you don't want to do that. So I'm not a big believer in common stock to anyone other than founders. So again, common stock, if you own it, you typically have voting rights, and that's kind of it. We're going to get into what preferred stock is and the preferences and privileges it has, and a liquidation order. You know, if you sell the company or you go bankrupt, there's kind of a pecking order who gets paid first. Common stock is at the bottom. And just so you'll know, typically angel investors and VCs, they don't invest in common stock. They're going to invest through some of the other instruments that we're going to talk about in a second. And if you're selling versus common stock, it's a simple 5-page subscription agreement, so it's really simple to do. All right, let's talk about convertible notes. Andy, I'm going to pick on you. You're going to be my either investor or investee. If I make a loan to Andy and it's $100,000, a convertible note, it's a loan. It's debt on your books, but it's also called a convertible security, meaning at some point that debt may convert to a security, i.e. common stock. So let's go through some of the terms for a convertible note that typically need to be negotiated. All right. Andy's raising $100,000. Okay, my first thing is, how long is the note? Typically it's a year, 18 months, maybe 2 years. And I'm going to tell you what the significance of the maturity date is in a second. Next, it's debt. So you typically have simple interest that accrues. It can be anywhere between 6%, 10%, maybe even more if it's a risky investment. And a qualified financing amount is something you negotiate, and what that means is, all right, I've invested $100,000 with Andy in a convertible note. At some point, he's going to go raise preferred stock through what's called a priced round, which we're going to discuss in a minute. At that point, if he raises, in this case it's $500,000, if he raises $500,000, he's hit the qualified financing amount. What that does is it automatically converts the debt into equity. Equity in that next price round. The next question is, okay, the next round they raised a bunch of money at a high valuation. What am I going to, oh shit, sorry. what am I going to get? So typically a note can have a discount and or a valuation cap. So first, a discount. A discount is simply a discount to what the share price is in that next price round. And we're going to have an example in a second. So put a pin in that for a second. The second term is a valuation cap. And let me explain what a valuation cap. It's really to protect I got to stop touching my coat. It's really to protect the investor from you really succeeding, okay? So Andy, again, let's say I invest $100,000 on May 1st, okay? And you know, we didn't really discuss valuation, but I think you're probably worth $2 million, okay? So had I invested in equity, I would have valued your company at $2 million, okay? I give you $100,000. Let's say in a year, you're just killing it. You're killing it. You go raise money at, I'm going to be crazy, $10 million valuation, okay? If I only have that 20% discount, when I convert into that next round, I'm going to convert at a 20% discount, meaning at an $8 million valuation. I'm getting totally screwed because 1 year before I could have invested at a $2 million valuation. Now my money's coming in at 8. So that's the purpose of the valuation cap. It limits how high I can go. So for example, if you're a $2 million company, I do a convertible note, I may say, I want a valuation cap of $2.5, $3 million, maybe just a little bit of more than what I think you're worth. So if you do raise money in a year at 10 million, I come in at the valuation cap, the lower amount, the $3 million level. That means I get more shares. Any questions with that? All right. Generically speaking, we've invested in a convertible note pursuant to these terms. There are basically 3 scenarios. 3 things can happen in the simplistic terms. Let's say it's a 1-year note, maturity note, and during that, before the 1 year and before there's a qualified financing amount, let's say the company sells. What happens? I've got this convertible security, what's going on? Typically, there's a provision in the convertible note that says if there's a change of control before the maturity date and before a qualified financing amount is hit, you'll get a 2x return. Kind of, okay, I'm getting my money, I'm getting, 1 times my money basically. If I invested $100,000, I'll get $200,000. Okay, that's nice, but it's not a home run. That's the change of control provision. That's number 1. The second scenario is if Andy then raises a priced round, he hits the $500,000 qualified financing amount, and then that automatically converts my debt into that equity round. That's the automatic conversion. Everybody wants that. That's kind of a win-win. He's getting debt off his books, turning me into equity, and I'm going into equity, and I'm happy because obviously if you're raising $500,000, you must be doing well. And the third scenario, which happens a lot, is a year goes by, you hit the maturity date, and there's not been a sale of the company, and you've not raised a qualified financing amount. So what happens? Well, what mostly happens is they go, okay, Andy, I'm going to extend the maturity date. Okay? That's what happens most of the time. But as the owner of the company, you need to this falls in the category of pick your investors wisely. Because frankly, if you get an investor who's an asshole, what he can say is, look, it's the maturity date. I want you to give me back my $100,000 plus my accrued interest. What do? Hey, I don't have $100,000. Hey, I'm gonna seize all your property. That never happens because if the company can't pay it, it's typically a software company. They really don't have any assets to seize. So it's really a negotiating position. So what happens sometimes, not that often, is I'm the investor, the maturity date comes along, I say, look, you didn't raise money, you didn't sell the company, I'm going to extend the maturity date, but I want a sweetener. I want you to give me warrants. So I'm going to negotiate something more because I'm extending the date. So that's always, it doesn't happen very often, but it's a realistic possibility. The other possibility that I've seen is all right, Andy, you didn't sell the company, you didn't raise money. I'm willing to extend the maturity date, but I think you suck as a CEO. If you want me to extend the maturity date, hire your replacement. So a lot of things can happen with that maturity date. So always just keep that in the back of your mind. All right, here's an example. Well, I guess I'm Sally. Sally, I'm investing $100,000 in Andy's company. It's a 12-month maturity date. Interest is 10%. Let's say there's a qualified financing amount of $500,000, 20% discount, $3 million cap. All right. You're successful in raising $500,000 a year later. You raised $2 million at a $6 million pre-money valuation, which means an $8 million post-money valuation. And that comes out to 50 cents per share. All right.